The motel keycard fell from my 9-year-old son's library book at exactly 7:11 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the time because I'd just glanced at the microwave clock, wondering when Isabella would get home from her book club meeting. Ethan was sprawled on the living room carpet, working through a stack of books he'd checked out that afternoon, and the plastic card tumbled out from between the pages of Captain Underpants, like it had been waiting for this exact moment. "What's that, buddy?" I asked, not really paying attention. I was reviewing case files on my laptop. Digital forensics for the Spokane PD doesn't stop just because you're home for the evening. "I don't know." Ethan picked it up, squinting at it. "It's got a flower on it, like the ones Mr. Hayes gives Mommy." My fingers stopped moving over the keyboard. "What did you say?" "The flower man at the library. He gives Mommy presents sometimes. She puts them in her bag real fast." Ethan was already back to his book, completely unaware that he'd just detonated a grenade in the middle of our kitchen. I set my laptop aside and walked over, taking the card from where he'd tossed it on the carpet. Blue plastic, generic design. The Riverside Motor Lodge logo, a stylized rose, embossed in silver on the front. Room 214 printed in small text near the magnetic strip. 17 years in digital forensics. 17 years of piecing together other people's worst moments from data trails and metadata. I'd always thought of it as detective work, helping catch criminals and bring closure to victims. I never thought I'd be using those skills on my own wife. "Hey, champ," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Why don't you go play video games for a bit? I need to make some work calls." Ethan's face lit up. Video games on a school night was practically Christmas. He scrambled toward the stairs, leaving his books scattered across the floor. "Really? Even Minecraft?" "Even Minecraft. Just keep the volume down, okay?" "Thanks, Dad." He was gone in a flash of sneakers and unbrushed hair. I waited until I heard his bedroom door close, then I went to the garage. My portable forensics kit sat on the workbench, a habit from years of being called to crime scenes at odd hours. The keycard reader was designed for hotel lock systems, something I'd acquired after a case involving stolen credit cards being used at extended stay motels. Most cops would have needed to send a card like this to a lab and wait weeks. I could read it in 30 seconds. I slid the card through. The screen populated with data, and my stomach dropped through the floor. 17 check-ins. All to room 214. All between 6:30 and 7 p.m. All on Tuesday nights, the same night Isabella had her book club meetings at the library. The first entry was dated 3 months ago. The most recent was last week. I sat down heavily on my workbench stool and stared at the numbers until they blurred. Part of me wanted to believe there was an explanation. Maybe she was helping a friend. Maybe the library had some kind of partnership with the motel for traveling authors or something equally ridiculous. But I'd spent nearly 2 decades separating lies from truth, and I knew what I was looking at. My wife was having an affair. And based on my son's innocent comment about the flower man, I was pretty sure I knew who with. Derek Hayes, head librarian at the Spokane County Public Library's main branch. I'd met him maybe 4 times at library events. Always found him a little too smooth, a little too eager to shake hands and make eye contact. The kind of guy who practiced his smile in the mirror and probably had a whole routine for first impressions. I pulled up the library's website on my phone and found his staff photo. Mid-40s, salt and pepper hair, the sort of distinguished look that probably worked well on women who spent their days surrounded by books and quiet conversation. His bio described him as a passionate advocate for literacy, who had revolutionized community reading programs across 3 states. Isabella had been working at the library for 6 years. She'd started part-time when Ethan entered kindergarten, eventually moving to full-time as the children's reading coordinator. She loved it. Came home full of stories about the kids she worked with, the programs she was developing, the grants she was helping to write. Or at least, that's what she told me. I checked the timestamps on the Keycard data again. Every single check-in corresponded with a Tuesday when Isabella had texted me that book club was running late, or when she'd mentioned staying after to reorganize the children's section. I pulled up my phone's message history and cross-referenced them. March 8th. Book club running long, home by 9. Keycard scanned at 6:47 p.m. March 15th. Doing inventory, don't wait up. Keycard scanned at 6:52 p.m. March 22nd. Karen wants to discuss next month's picks. Grabbing dinner after. Keycard scanned at 6:38 p.m. 3 months. 17 visits. Probably more that the card didn't capture. The sound of the garage door opening made me shove the forensics kit behind a toolbox. Isabella's car pulled in, and I watched through the window as she checked her reflection in the rearview mirror before getting out. She was wearing the blue dress I'd always liked, the one she usually saved for date nights. She touched up her lipstick, adjusted her hair, and grabbed her purse. All the little rituals of someone making sure they looked good. For me? Or because she'd been looking good for someone else all evening? I went back inside before she could catch me watching. "Hey, babe," she called out, dropping her purse on the kitchen counter. Book club ran a little long. Karen wouldn't stop talking about that new Colleen Hoover. Yeah? I didn't turn around from the sink, where I was pretending to wash a glass that was already clean. How was the discussion? Good, really good. Very passionate debate about the ending. She came up behind me and put her hand on my shoulder. Her perfume was different than this morning, fresher, like she'd reapplied it recently. "Where's Ethan?" "Playing video games. I told him he could have an extra hour since he finished his homework early." "That's sweet of you." She kissed my cheek. "I'm going to take a shower. Long day." I'll bet it was. "Hey, She stopped halfway to the stairs. "Did you see Derek today? At the library?" Something flickered across her face. Barely a microsecond, but I was trained to catch these things. The slight tension around her eyes. The almost imperceptible pause before she answered. "Derek?" "Yeah, briefly. He stopped by my section to talk about the summer reading program." "Why?" "Just curious. Ethan mentioned him earlier. Said something about flowers." Her laugh sounded forced. "Oh, that. Derek brings in flowers from his garden sometimes. Puts them in the break room. You know how libraries are. Any color helps." "Right, makes sense." She headed upstairs. A moment later, I heard the water running. I went through her purse. I'm not proud of it, but I'd stopped being proud about 30 minutes earlier when I'd realized my marriage was a lie. Her wallet was ordinary. Credit cards, driver's license, a few receipts from the grocery store. But tucked into the side pocket, I found a folded piece of paper. It was a printout, a receipt from the library's petty cash system. $89 for conference supplies. Dated last Tuesday. The authorization signature at the bottom was Derek Hayes. Conference supplies. In a library that hadn't hosted a conference in 8 months. I photographed it with my phone and put everything back exactly as I'd found it. That night, I lay in bed next to my wife and stared at the ceiling until 3 a.m. She slept peacefully, her breathing steady and untroubled. At one point, she rolled over and draped her arm across my chest, murmuring something about love, and I had to fight the urge to push her away. I kept thinking about Ethan, about his casual mention of the flower man, and how Mommy put the presents in her bag real fast. How long had my son been witnessing something he didn't understand? How many times had he seen things that would make terrible sense only when he was older? By dawn, I had a plan. I took the next day off work, claiming a stomach bug. Isabella left for the library at 8, kissing Ethan goodbye and reminding me to pick him up from school at 3. "Feel better, honey," she said, placing her hand on my forehead like she was checking for fever. "There's soup in the pantry if you want it." "Thanks." As soon as her car disappeared around the corner, I got to work. The petty cash receipt had given me somewhere to start. I logged into the county's public records database. One of the perks of working law enforcement was access to systems most people couldn't reach, and started digging. The Spokane County Library System received funding from multiple sources: county budget allocations, state literacy grants, federal programs for underserved communities. Over the past 3 years, the main branch had received nearly $400,000 in grant money specifically earmarked for children's reading programs. I cross-referenced the grant disbursements with the library's publicly reported expenditures. The numbers didn't match. Not by a little bit. By a lot. According to the grant reports, the library had purchased over $60,000 in new children's books, educational software, and reading materials in the past 18 months. But when I checked the library's actual inventory system, publicly accessible through their online catalog, the new acquisitions didn't add up to half that amount. Someone was skimming. I dug deeper. The petty cash system Isabella had been using was authorized by Derek Hayes. Every single receipt I could find, and I found dozens through public records requests I'd filed under my badge, carried his signature. Small amounts mostly. $50 here, $80 there. Office supplies. Program materials. Community outreach. Easy to overlook individually, but over months, over years, they added up. By noon, I had documented over $45,000 in suspicious transactions, and that was just from the records I could access without a warrant. I sat back and rubbed my eyes, trying to process what I'd found. For a long moment, I just stared at the spreadsheet on my screen, watching the numbers blur and refocus. My wife wasn't just having an affair. She was helping her lover steal money from children's literacy programs. The irony wasn't lost on me. Isabella had always been passionate about kids and reading. It was what had drawn her to library work in the first place. I remembered how excited she'd been when she got the job, how she'd come home glowing after her first successful storytime session with a group of preschoolers. "I made a kid fall in love with books today, Mason," she'd said. Her face lit up like Christmas morning. That's magic. Real magic. Now she was helping someone steal the money that was supposed to buy those books. I thought about Ethan's school, about the reading initiative they'd been promised funding for next year. The principal had sent home a letter just last month, excited about the new books and technology they'd be receiving through a county grant. Ethan had been thrilled. He'd told everyone his mom worked at the library that was making it happen. That grant money was sitting in Derek Hayes' pocket. I picked up my phone and called my partner at the station, a veteran detective named Jim Bradshaw, who'd taught me most of what I knew about building cases. "Torres," he answered on the second ring. "Thought you were dying of some stomach thing." "I need a favor. Off the books?" There was a pause. Jim had known me long enough to hear something in my voice, the flat, controlled tone I used when things were serious. "What kind of favor?" I need you to run a background check on someone. Derek Hayes, head librarian at the county main branch. This about a case? It's personal. Another pause, longer this time. Personal how? Jim. Okay. You sure you want to go down this road, though? Personal investigations have a way of getting messy. I'm already on it. The mess already exists. He sighed heavily. Give me a couple hours. I spent those hours going through every digital trace I could find of Derek Hayes. His social media was carefully curated. Photos of library events, inspirational quotes about reading, pictures with smiling children holding books. The kind of online presence designed to make him look like exactly what he claimed to be, a dedicated public servant. But I knew how to look deeper. His LinkedIn showed an interesting career path. 3 different library systems in 3 different states over 15 years. Each move framed as a new opportunity or career advancement. But when I dug into the archives of local newspapers from each location, I found a pattern. In Oregon, there'd been a small article about financial irregularities at a library he'd managed. No charges filed. He left 6 months later. In Nevada, a brief mention of a personnel dispute that had been resolved internally. He left 8 months after that. In each case, he'd landed somewhere new with glowing recommendations. Someone was either covering for him or he was very good at burning evidence. Jim called back at 4:17 while I was helping Ethan with his spelling words at the kitchen table. I'd picked him up from school like normal, played the part of the sick dad who was feeling a little better. Hey buddy, can you practice those last 5 on your own? I need to take this. Sure, Dad. Ethan was already distracted by Pretzel, our beagle, who'd wandered in looking for dropped snacks. Is it a work call? About bad guys? Something like that. I stepped out onto the back porch, the spring air cool against my face, and answered. What'd you find? Your boy Hayes has got a history. Jim's voice was grim. He was asked to resign from a library system in Oregon about 8 years ago. The official reason was budget restructuring, but I talked to a guy I know in Portland PD who remembers the case. There were allegations of financial impropriety and inappropriate relationships with female staff members. My grip tightened on the phone. Relationships plural? At least 3 that came forward. But nothing was ever proven, and the library quietly let him go rather than deal with the scandal. Gave him a neutral reference and sent him on his way. He landed in Nevada about 6 months later, then moved to Spokane after some similar rumblings there. So this is a pattern. Looks like it. My contact said he always targets the same type. Married women, late 20s to mid-30s, usually with young kids. Positions them where they have access to money or records, makes them feel special, gets them compromised, then uses that leverage to keep them in line. I gripped the porch railing until my knuckles went white. Maximum leverage. That's what my guy said. These women have everything to lose. Husbands, kids, careers. By the time they realize what's happening, they're in too deep to get out. And no one's ever stopped him? People have tried. A woman in Oregon went to HR, but Hayes had already laid groundwork painting her as unstable, emotional, making things up because he'd rejected her advances. Jim hesitated. Mason, I gotta ask, is Isabella involved in this? I watched through the kitchen window as Ethan played with Pretzel, throwing a ball that the dog enthusiastically ignored. Yeah, she is. How deep? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Be careful. You start investigating your own wife. Things get complicated fast. IAD doesn't like it when cops go rogue, even for personal reasons. And if this is as big as it sounds, you might need to hand it off to people with actual jurisdiction. I know, but I need to understand what I'm dealing with first. Fair enough. Just don't do anything stupid, okay? Call me if you need anything. Thanks, Jim. I owe you. You owe me about 10 beers at this point. I'm keeping a tab. I hung up and stood there for a while, watching Ethan through the window. He was laughing at something Pretzel was doing, completely innocent, completely unaware that his entire world was about to change. I promised myself right then that whatever happened, I would protect him. Whatever it cost me, whatever it took, my son wouldn't suffer for his mother's choices. I confronted Isabella that Friday night. Ethan was at a sleepover with his friend Marcus, giving us the house to ourselves. She thought it was going to be a romantic evening. I'd suggested we order in from her favorite Italian place, maybe open a bottle of wine. The food sat untouched on the counter when I set the motel keycard on the table between us. I know about Derek. Her face went through about 6 different emotions in 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, fear, denial, and finally something that looked almost like relief, like she'd been carrying a weight she was tired of holding. Mason, I can explain. 17 times, Isabella. 3 months. Room 214 at the Riverside Motor Lodge. I kept my voice flat, professional. The same tone I used when interviewing suspects who didn't know I already had them cold. Your book club meetings that always ran late. The late inventory sessions at the library. All lies. It wasn't. She stopped, started again. How did you find out? Ethan found the keycard in a library book. Told me about the flower man who gives mommy presents. I watched her face crumble at that. My 9-year-old son has been watching you carry on with another man, and he didn't even understand what he was seeing. Her hand flew to her mouth. Oh God. Ethan, what exactly did he see? Enough to know something was wrong. Enough to remember details he shouldn't have to remember. I felt the anger rising in my chest and pushed it down. I needed to stay focused. Do you have any idea what it was like, sitting there while my kid innocently described his mother receiving gifts from another man? While he asked why you put things in your bag real fast like you were hiding them? Mason, please. No, you don't get to please me right now. You don't get to cry and make this about your feelings. I heard my voice hardening and didn't try to stop it. I've spent 17 years interrogating people who've done terrible things. Murderers, thieves, abusers. And you know what? Most of them cried too. Most of them had excuses. Most of them wanted sympathy for the mess they'd made of their lives. I never gave it to them, and I'm not giving it to you. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Maybe I wanted her to. How long? I asked. And don't lie to me. Don't even think about lying to me, because I will find out. And when I do, any chance you have of getting through this intact goes out the window. 4 months. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Not 3. It started 4 months ago. There were times before the keycard. How did it start? Do you really want to know? I want to understand how my wife, the mother of my child, the woman I've built a life with for 11 years, ended up spending her Tuesday evenings in a motel room with her boss. She started crying. I'd expected that. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Derek, he understood me. He made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. You're always working, always tired, always somewhere else even when you're sitting right next to me. Save it. I've heard versions of that speech from 100 different people in 100 different interrogation rooms. My spouse didn't appreciate me. I was lonely. It just happened. I pushed the petty cash receipt across the table. What I want to know is how deep you're in on the embezzlement. That stopped her cold. The tears dried up fast, replaced by something that looked a lot like fear. What are you talking about? The grant money, the fake vendor accounts, the $45,000 I've already traced, and probably a lot more I haven't found yet. I leaned forward, using every interrogation technique I'd learned over 17 years. Did you know about it from the beginning? Or did he rope you in after he had leverage? Mason, I don't... She stopped, and I watched the calculations happening behind her eyes. She was trying to figure out how much I knew, whether she could still lie her way out. How much do you know? Enough to put both of you away. But I'm giving you a chance here, Isabella. One chance. Tell me everything right now, and maybe we can figure out how to minimize the damage to this family. Keep lying to me, and I'll treat you like any other suspect in a federal investigation. Federal? Misuse of federal grant money. Wire fraud across state lines. This isn't a local matter anymore. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the exact instant when she decided to break. I didn't know at first. About the money, I mean. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Derek and I... It started about 4 months ago, not 3. There were times before the Keycard. He was so attentive, so interested in what I thought, what I wanted. He'd ask about my day, really listen to the answers, remember little details I'd mentioned weeks earlier. The playbook, I said. He runs the same routine on every woman. I know that now, but at the time, she shook her head. I was stupid. I felt invisible in my own life, and he made me feel like I mattered. When did you find out about the money? About 3 weeks after it started. He asked me to help him with some paperwork. Said there were discrepancies in the grant accounting, and he needed someone he could trust to help clean it up before the auditors came. She laughed bitterly. I actually believed him. I thought I was helping protect the library. But you figured it out. Eventually, the numbers didn't add up, and I'm not stupid. When I confronted him about it, She stopped, her face going pale. He what? He showed me the videos. My blood went cold. He recorded you. Without my knowledge, at the motel. He said they were for us, but when I tried to end things, he made it clear they weren't. Her voice was barely above a whisper. He said if I ever tried to leave, or tell anyone, or go to the police, he'd send them everywhere. To you, to my parents, to the school board, to every parent whose kid I'd ever worked with at the library. So you kept quiet. What else could I do? He has everything, Mason. Everything. One wrong move and my life is over. Our son's life is over. How do you explain to a 9-year-old why mommy is all over the internet? I processed this new information. Derek wasn't just a thief and a philanderer. He was a systematic predator who used blackmail to control his victims. Which meant Isabella wasn't the only one being held hostage. Who else is involved? What do you mean? He didn't build this operation alone. He's been running the same scheme at other branches, probably with other women. The pattern is too established. Who else? Isabella shook her head slowly. I don't know. He keeps everything compartmentalized. Different women don't know about each other. He told me I was special, that he'd never met anyone like me. Another bitter laugh. The oldest line in the book, and I fell for it. Think. Anyone he warned you about? Anyone he mentioned in passing? She was quiet for a moment, searching her memory. There was one woman, Rachel Kim. She worked at the downtown branch before she got transferred. Derek told me to stay away from her, said she was unstable and couldn't be trusted, that she'd made accusations against him because he'd rejected her advances. The same story he used in Oregon. What? It's his standard defense. When someone gets too close to the truth, he paints them as a scorned woman making up lies. I filed Rachel Kim's name away. What happened to her? She got demoted and transferred to some tiny branch on the north side. I heard she lost her benefits, had to take a pay cut. Isabella looked at me with something like horror dawning in her eyes. Oh God. He did that to her because she tried to expose him, didn't he? Probably. And I believed him. I actually felt sorry for him having to deal with a crazy former employee. She buried her face in her hands. I'm such an idiot. What happens now? I asked. What do you mean? You have two choices. Help me build a case against Derek and maybe, come out of this with something resembling a life. Or keep protecting him and go down with the ship? She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. You'd really do that? Turn me in? I don't want to, but I will not let that man hurt anyone else. If that means my wife goes to prison alongside him, then that's what happens. I paused, letting the weight of that sink in. But I'd rather it didn't come to that. For Ethan's sake. And for yours? Honestly? I don't know what I feel about you right now. But I know what I feel about my son. And I won't let your mistakes destroy him. She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. What do you need me to do? Rachel Kim worked at a small branch library on the north side of the city, a converted storefront in a strip mall next to a dry cleaner and a nail salon. The kind of place people drove past without noticing. I found her reshelving books in the children's section on a rainy Monday afternoon, surrounded by picture books and beanbag chairs. Mrs. Kim, I'm Mason Torres. I was hoping we could talk. She was younger than I'd expected, early 30s with tired eyes that didn't match her age. Her hair was pulled back in a functional ponytail, and she wore the kind of practical clothes that suggested she'd stopped caring about appearances a while ago. When I mentioned Derek Hayes's name, those tired eyes went hard as steel. I've got nothing to say about him. I think you do, and I think you've been waiting a long time for someone to ask the right questions. She glanced around the empty library. It was barely past noon on a weekday, and we were alone except for an elderly man dozing over a newspaper in the corner. Who are you exactly? Digital forensics for Spokane PD. But this isn't an official visit. It's personal. Personal how? My wife works at the main branch, under Derek Hayes. Rachel's expression shifted. The hardness remained, but there was something else there now. Recognition, maybe. Or sympathy. Let me guess. He got to her. The same way he gets to everyone. Yeah. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded toward a door marked Staff Only. My office, such as it is. The office was barely bigger than a closet, stuffed with donated books, handmade reading posters, and stacks of paperwork that had probably been there since the previous occupant. Rachel cleared a pile of children's magazines off a folding chair and gestured for me to sit. How much do you know? She asked, settling behind her cramped desk. Enough to be dangerous, not enough to do anything about it yet. Then let me fill in the gaps. She told me her story in a quiet, controlled voice, the voice of someone who'd rehearsed it in her head 1,000 times, waiting for an audience that never came. He started the same way with me. I was 28, Married 3 years. One kid in preschool. Working at the downtown branch, trying to build a career. Derek was new, dynamic, full of ideas about community engagement and literacy outreach. She smiled without humor. He noticed me, asked my opinions in meetings when other supervisors talked over me, remembered my birthday, brought me coffee the way I liked it. The playbook. I didn't know it was a playbook then. I just knew someone was finally treating me like I mattered. She picked up a pencil and turned it over in her fingers. It took about 2 months before things got physical. Another month before I found out about the money. How'd you find out? Accident, like most things. I was looking for a budget file and stumbled onto his real accounting. The one that showed where the grant money actually went. When I confronted him about it, She stopped, took a breath, started again. He told me I was imagining things, that I was stressed, emotional, maybe having some kind of breakdown. He was so convincing that I almost believed him. But you didn't. I made copies, took them to HR. She laughed, a harsh sound in the small room. Big mistake. By the time I got there, Derek had already laid the groundwork, talked to my supervisor about how I'd been acting erratic lately, mentioned to colleagues that he was worried about my mental health, said I'd been making inappropriate advances and he'd been forced to reject them firmly. Jesus. When I showed up with accusations of financial misconduct and an affair, everyone already had a story in their heads. The unstable woman making up lies to destroy the man who'd spurned her. She set the pencil down carefully. I got demoted, transferred, lost my benefits, had to take a pay cut that my family still hasn't recovered from. My husband nearly left me because he didn't know what to believe. Why didn't you go to the police? With what evidence? Derek made sure anything incriminating went through 3 different layers of obfuscation. Shell companies, fake vendors, accounting tricks that would take a forensic expert months to unravel. She met my eyes. I'm a librarian, Mr. Torres. I'm very good at organizing information and helping kids fall in love with books. I'm not equipped to take down a sophisticated financial criminal. But I am. That's why I'm talking to you. She opened a desk drawer and pulled out a worn manila folder. I've been keeping this for 4 years. Everything I managed to copy before Derek sanitized the records. It's not enough to prove anything on its own, but maybe combined with whatever you found. I took the folder and flipped through its contents. Financial statements, email printouts, a list of names and dates. Some of it overlapped with what I already had. Some of it filled in gaps I hadn't known existed. This is good, really good. I've been waiting to give it to someone who could actually use it. Rachel leaned forward. There's something else you need to know. Derek doesn't work alone. What do you mean? His wife, Patricia Hayes. She works for the county education department. She's the one who approves a lot of the grants Derek applies for. I could never prove it, but I'm pretty sure they run this as a team. She creates the funding opportunities. He exploits them. They split the money. I thought about the grant money flowing through the county system. All those programs designed to help kids learn to read. How long have they been doing this? At least a decade, from what I could piece together. They move every few years when things get too hot. Oregon, Nevada, now Washington. Each time, they leave behind a trail of ruined women and empty coffers, and somehow they always land on their feet. Not this time. Rachel looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. I really hope you're right about that, because if you go after him and miss, he won't just destroy you. He'll destroy everyone who helped you. I understand the stakes. Do you? Because I thought I did too, and I was wrong. She stood up, signaling the end of our conversation. Be smarter than I was, Mr. Torres, and be careful. The next 3 weeks were the most intensive investigation of my career, and none of it was official. I worked nights and weekends, burning through vacation days I'd been saving for a family trip that would never happen now. Every evening after Ethan went to bed, I'd retreat to the basement where I'd set up a secure workstation, piecing together the puzzle one fragment at a time. Isabella helped when she could, her cooperation driven by equal parts guilt and self-preservation. She smuggled documents out of the library in her lunch bag, copied files from Derek's computer when he was in meetings, passed along overheard conversations and scheduling details. She was terrified the entire time. I could see it in the way her hands shook when she handed over another thumb drive, the way she jumped at every unexpected sound. Derek had grown suspicious. Not of me exactly, but of something. He'd started questioning Isabella about small details, testing her responses, dropping references to see how she reacted. He asked me today if I'd talked to anyone about our special projects, she told me one night, her voice barely above a whisper, even though we were alone in our kitchen. He said it in that tone, the one that means he's not really asking. What did you tell him? That I hadn't, that I wouldn't, that I love him. She looked sick saying it. He seemed to believe me, but Mason, I don't know how much longer I can do this. He's watching me constantly now. Shows up at random times, checks my phone, asks where I've been. Just a little longer. We're almost there. She grabbed my arm, her grip desperate. He showed up here yesterday, at the house. What? While you were at work. Said he was just checking in on Ethan. Stood in our living room for 20 minutes, asking about how things were going, whether there was anything I needed to talk about. Her eyes were bright with fear. He was looking for something, or testing me. I don't know which is worse. I felt a cold fury building in my chest, the kind I'd learned to control over years of police work, but that never fully went away. This man had been in my home, near my son, playing his games while wearing his mask of friendly concern. I'll handle it. How? By being smarter than he is. I played the role of the oblivious husband perfectly for the next 2 weeks. Shook Derek's hand at a library fundraiser, offered him coffee when he stopped by our house again, even thanked him publicly for being such a great mentor to Isabella's career. The words tasted like acid in my mouth, but I needed him comfortable. I needed him to keep talking, keep relaxing, keep believing he was in control. Because I was recording everything. My forensics kit included surveillance devices so small they could be hidden in a pen cap. I planted them in Isabella's purse, in her car, in the library break room. Every conversation Derek had with my wife, every instruction he gave her about moving money or covering tracks, went straight to a secure server I'd set up in the basement. Jim Bradshaw helped me build the case file, strictly off the clock. He had contacts at the FBI's white-collar crime division, and they were very interested in what I was finding. This is big, Mason, Jim told me, over drinks at a bar neither of us usually frequented. A dingy place on the edge of downtown where cops didn't go and no one would recognize us. We're talking federal charges here. Wire fraud, embezzlement, blackmail, potentially RICO if we can prove the pattern across state lines. That's what I'm counting on. I traced a water ring on the bar with my finger. I want to make sure it sticks. No technical errors, no chain of custody issues, nothing a good defense attorney can exploit. You're being careful. That's good. He took a long pull from his beer, studying me over the rim of the glass. But there's something you need to think about before this thing goes any further. Isabella. Yeah. He set his beer down carefully. Look, I've been where you are. Not exactly, my wife didn't get involved in federal crimes, but I've been the guy trying to hold his family together while the ground was crumbling underneath. What happened? Divorced after 18 years. She met someone at her gym. The usual stupid story. He shrugged, but I could see the old wound underneath. Point is, I know what you're feeling right now. The anger, the hurt, the need to burn it all down. And I'm telling you, as a friend, not a cop, you need to be careful about where you aim that fire. Meaning? Meaning Isabella's going to face consequences no matter what. Cooperation counts, but she's still an accessory to federal crimes. Best case scenario, she gets probation and a felony record that follows her forever. Worst case? He didn't finish the sentence. I've thought about it. A lot. I stared at the condensation running down my glass. Every night since this started. But she made her choices, Jim. I didn't force her into that motel room. I didn't make her help Derek steal from kids' reading programs. No, you didn't. But your son didn't make those choices either. And he's the one who's really going to pay. That landed harder than I wanted to admit. I know. Do you? Jim leaned forward, his voice low and intense. Because here's what I see. I see a guy who's damn good at his job, who's building an airtight case that's going to put away some real bad people. That's good. That's the right thing to do. But I also see a guy who's so focused on the investigation that he's not thinking about what comes after. What happens to Ethan when his mom goes to court? When the kids at school find out? When his whole world gets ripped apart because his parents couldn't keep their marriage together? What would you have me do? Let Derek walk? Let him keep destroying families, keep stealing from children? No. I'd have you think about how you play this so your kid takes the least damage. He finished his beer and set it down with a heavy thunk. That's all I'm saying. The case is important. But so is your boy. I stared at the bar top for a long moment. I'll be fine once it's over. We'll be fine. I hope so, Mason. I really do. The break came 6 weeks after I'd found the keycard. I'd created a fictitious grant opportunity, an $80,000 digital literacy program supposedly funded by a tech foundation that didn't actually exist. The application process I'd designed required detailed financial documentation from participating libraries, exactly the kind of paperwork that would expose Derek's network if he took the bait. He didn't just take it, he swallowed it whole. I watched through my surveillance feeds as Derek and Patricia met at a coffee shop downtown to discuss the opportunity. They sat in a corner booth, speaking in low voices, completely unaware that the elderly couple at the next table were FBI agents. "This is exactly what we need," Patricia said, stirring her latte with perfectly manicured nails. "Foundation money moves faster than government grants. Less oversight, fewer questions. I'll have the applications from all 4 branches ready by Friday." Derek smiled his practiced smile. "Should we bring the full package to the meeting?" "Full documentation. This one's too big to half-effort." Full package. That meant the real books, the genuine financial records that showed where the money actually went, the documents that would prove everything. I contacted my FBI liaison that night. "We're ready to move," I told Agent Sarah Mitchell, a 10-year veteran of the white-collar crime division who'd been coordinating the federal side of the investigation. "I can get them in a room with all the evidence we need." "How confident are you in your source information?" recorded conversations going back 6 weeks, financial documents from multiple sources, testimony from at least 4 victims willing to cooperate. It's solid. Then let's set a date. The sting was scheduled for a Thursday evening in late May. Derek had arranged a meeting at the Central Library after hours, supposedly to finalize the grant applications with representatives from the Tech Foundation. In reality, those representatives would be undercover FBI agents, and the library would be wired with more surveillance equipment than a casino floor. Isabella knew about it. I'd told her the night before, watching her face cycle through terror, relief, and something that might have been hope. It's really gonna be over? One way or another. She grabbed my hand, the first time she'd touched me voluntarily in weeks. Mason, I know I don't deserve anything from you, but please, whatever happens to me, make sure Ethan is protected. He shouldn't suffer for my mistakes. That's why I'm doing this. All of this. She nodded, her eyes wet. I'm sorry for everything. I know that doesn't mean much now, but I am. We'll figure out the rest after. Right now, I need you focused. Can you do that? Yes. The night of the sting, I was positioned in a surveillance van 2 blocks from the library, watching multiple screens that showed feeds from every corner of the building. Agent Mitchell sat beside me, coordinating with her team through a wireless earpiece. 2 other agents monitored the audio feeds, transcribing everything in real time. The van smelled like cold coffee and nervous sweat, the universal atmosphere of stakeouts everywhere. Targets are 5 minutes out, one of the agents reported. Black BMW, 2 occupants. Copy that, Mitchell replied. All teams, final positions. We go on my signal and not before. I checked my phone for the dozenth time. Isabella had texted an hour ago. Ethan's at Marcus's house. I'm home, waiting. I'd told her to stay put, to let this play out without her involvement. The FBI had everything they needed. Her presence could only complicate things. Torres, Mitchell's voice cut through my thoughts. You okay? Fine. You don't look fine. You look like you're about to punch through that monitor. I've been waiting 6 weeks for this moment. I'm just ready for it to be over. She studied me for a moment. You know, most civilians in your position would have handed this off and walked away. Let the professionals handle it. And let Derek keep hurting people while the wheels of justice turn slowly? No thanks. That's what I mean. You didn't do this just because of your wife. You did it because it was the right thing to do. She turned back to her screens. That's rare. Don't let anyone tell you different. At 7:15, Derek and Patricia walked in together, both carrying leather briefcases stuffed with documentation. They were dressed like professionals attending an important meeting, because that's exactly what they thought this was. They were met by 2 agents posing as Foundation executives, and for the next 40 minutes, I watched as they laid out their entire operation in beautiful, recorded detail. The shell companies, the fake vendors, the 4 libraries, the $200,000 they'd stolen over the past 3 years alone. Patricia was particularly proud of their system. You learn from every mistake, she said, leaning forward with the enthusiasm of someone describing a legitimate business innovation. The key is finding the right people to recruit. Vulnerable people with access and motivation. Women work best, Derek added, nodding. Married ones, with children. Give them attention they're not getting at home, make them feel special, and they'll do anything to keep you happy. And if they get cold feet? He smiled. Well, everyone has secrets they'd rather not share. I clenched my fists so hard my nails broke skin. Beside me, Agent Mitchell put a hand on my arm, a silent warning to stay calm. At 8:02, my phone buzzed. A text from Isabella. He knows something's wrong. He just called asking where I am. I typed back, "Stay calm. It's almost over." But 30 seconds later, he wants me to come to the library, says it's urgent, that he needs me there now. On the surveillance screens, Derek was checking his phone under the table, his expression subtly shifting from confident to alert. "He's testing her," Mitchell said. "If she shows up, he thinks she's clean. If she doesn't, he'll know something's wrong and lawyer up before we get what we need. We already have enough for charges. We could move now." I watched Derek on the screen, his thumb hovering over his phone. He was drafting another message, probably to one of his other victims, checking to see if anyone else was out of position. "Give it another few minutes," I said. "Let him keep talking." But Isabella, in a final act that surprised everyone including me, made her own choice. At 8:15, she walked into the library. I watched through the cameras as she approached the meeting table, her face pale but determined. Derek stood up immediately, relief washing over his features, followed almost instantly by suspicion. "Isabella, I thought you were home." "I was, but you said it was urgent." She glanced at the two Foundation executives, then back at Derek. "What's going on?" "Just finalizing some paperwork. Why don't you wait in my office? We're almost done here." "Actually," Isabella said, her voice surprisingly steady, "I think I should stay." Derek's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" "I've been thinking a lot lately. About everything you've asked me to do. About the promises you made." She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder, copies of the documents she'd been helping me gather. "And I've decided I'm done." She dropped the folder on the table. Derek's face went chalk white. "You don't know what you're doing, Isabella." "Yes, I do." She looked at him with something that might have been pity. "For the first time in months, I know exactly what I'm doing. You made me think I was special, that I was different from all the others. But I was just another target, wasn't I? Another vulnerable woman you could use and throw away." "Isabella." "My husband figured it out, Derek. All of it. The money, the blackmail, the other women. He's been building a case for weeks." That's when the agents made their move. "FBI, nobody move." The library erupted into controlled chaos. Agents emerged from the stacks, from behind checkout desks, from the children's reading corner where I'd taken Ethan just weeks ago. Derek tried to run, made it about 15 feet, before an agent tackled him into a display of summer reading recommendations. Patricia went quietly, her face a mask of cold fury aimed entirely at Isabella. "You stupid woman," she hissed as they led her past in handcuffs. "You have no idea what you've just done to yourself." "Actually, she does," I said, stepping out of the shadows near the entrance. I'd gotten clearance to be on scene for the takedown. Professional courtesy, given everything I'd contributed. "She's made sure you can't hurt anyone else." Derek looked up at me from the floor, understanding dawning in his eyes. You're her husband." "Mason Torres, Digital Forensics, Spokane PD." I crouched down to his level. "You really should have left my family alone." They loaded him into a waiting SUV, and I heard him sputtering about lawyers and entrapment, and how this was all a misunderstanding. The standard criminal repertoire. It wouldn't help him. I found Isabella standing alone by the library entrance, hugging herself like she was trying to hold together. She looked small and tired, and older than she'd seemed just weeks ago. "That took guts," I said. "Showing up like that, coming clean." I had to see it end. I had to know it was really over. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. I know this doesn't fix anything between us. I know you probably hate me. I don't hate you. I just don't trust you anymore. I paused, considering my next words carefully. But what you did tonight, that matters. The prosecutor will take it into account. Will it be enough? I don't know. We'll see. She nodded slowly. What happens now? Now we go home. Figure out how to tell our son that everything's different, and try to build some kind of future out of whatever's left. The trial came and went. 3 months from arrest to verdict. I attended every day, sitting in the gallery with other witnesses and interested parties, watching justice grind its slow but inevitable way toward conclusion. The federal courthouse in Spokane was an imposing granite building designed to make defendants feel small, and Derek Hayes looked smaller with each passing day of testimony. His defense attorney tried everything: character witnesses who testified to Derek's dedication to literacy, procedural challenges to the evidence collection, even an emotional speech about how the stress of working in underfunded public libraries had led to poor judgment. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Sandra Reeves who'd made her career putting away white-collar criminals, demolished each argument methodically. Poor judgment, she said during her closing statement, gesturing toward the evidence boards that lined one wall of the courtroom. The defendant systematically targeted vulnerable women across 3 states over more than a decade. He created shell companies, fabricated vendors, and maintained separate accounting systems specifically designed to hide his crimes. This wasn't poor judgment. This was a sophisticated criminal enterprise that stole over $200,000 from programs designed to help children learn to read. She turned to face the jury directly. And when his victims tried to come forward, he destroyed their careers and their reputations. He used intimate recordings as blackmail. He painted brave women as crazy, vindictive, unstable, anything to protect himself and continue his crimes. Derek Hayes received 12 years in federal prison on multiple counts of wire fraud, embezzlement, and extortion. He tried one last gambit, a tearful plea for mercy, claiming he'd been a dedicated public servant who'd lost his way. The judge wasn't impressed. Mr. Hayes, in my 20 years on the bench, I've seen a lot of defendants claim they made mistakes, she said, her voice cold as glacier ice. But you didn't make a mistake. You made a career out of exploiting vulnerable people and stealing from children. You deserve every day of the sentence I'm about to impose. Patricia got 5 years after cutting a deal to testify against her husband. She'd provided detailed testimony about their operation, naming dates, amounts, and victims with the clinical precision of someone who'd kept meticulous records. Turns out there's no loyalty among thieves when serious prison time is on the table. Rachel Kim testified too. So did 3 other women Derek had victimized over the years. Women who'd been afraid to come forward until they saw someone finally had the evidence to make charges stick. I watched them support each other through the process, forming an unexpected sisterhood of survivors. It was one of the few bright spots in an otherwise terrible season. During a break in the proceedings, Rachel found me in the hallway outside the courtroom. I wanted to thank you, she said, for believing me when no one else would. You did the hard work. I just followed the evidence. That's not true, and you know it. She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen on her face. You could have focused on the affair, gotten your divorce, and moved on. Instead, you dug deeper. You found the pattern. You gave all of us a chance to be heard. It was the right thing to do. Most people don't do the right thing when it's hard. You did. She squeezed my arm briefly. Your son is lucky to have you. I watched her walk back into the courtroom, thinking about what she'd said. Lucky wasn't how I would have described Ethan's situation. His parents were divorcing, his mother was a convicted felon, and his whole world had been turned upside down. But maybe Rachel was right. Maybe, in the end, having a father who did the right thing even when it was hard was a form of luck. Isabella cooperated fully with prosecutors. She spent 3 days on the witness stand, laying out every detail of how Derek had groomed and manipulated her, how she'd discovered the financial crimes and been blackmailed into silence. It wasn't easy for her, but she did it. The judge took her cooperation into account, along with her clean record and the fact that she was raising a young son. She received 18 months probation and 400 hours of community service. The felony record would follow her forever, but she wouldn't see the inside of a prison cell. I filed for divorce the week after the verdict. Full custody of Ethan, which Isabella didn't contest. He needs stability right now, she said during our final meeting with lawyers. Her voice was flat, exhausted. You can give him that. I need to figure out who I am without all of this. You're still his mother. He needs you in his life. I know. And I'll be there whenever he wants me. But I can't be his primary parent right now. Not until I've done the work to become someone he can be proud of again. She signed the papers with a hand that barely trembled. Tell him I love him. Every day, even when I'm not there. I will. The FBI came calling 2 months after the divorce was finalized. They wanted me for their Seattle field office, digital forensic specialist, working cases that spanned multiple states and jurisdictions. My work on the library investigation had impressed people in high places. You caught something that had been operating under the radar for over a decade, Agent Mitchell told me during the recruitment meeting. That takes skills we can use. I took the job. Ethan and I needed a fresh start, and Seattle offered exactly that. Close enough to Spokane for Isabella's visitation rights, far enough to feel like a new chapter. The move was hard. Ethan didn't understand at first why we were leaving our house, his school, his friends. Why Mommy wasn't coming with us. Why everything had to be different now. We spent a lot of nights on his bedroom floor, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, talking through his fears and confusion. Did Mommy do something really bad? She made some mistakes, buddy. Big ones. But she's working on fixing them. Is that why you're divorced now? That's part of it, yeah? He was quiet for a while, petting Pretzel, who'd claimed his bed as her personal domain since we'd arrived. Tommy at school said his parents got divorced because they stopped loving each other. Is that what happened? It's complicated. I'll always care about your mother because she gave me you. And you're the best thing in my life. I ruffled his hair. But sometimes adults grow apart in ways that mean they can't live together anymore. It doesn't mean anyone's bad or good. It just means things change. Will you get married again? I don't know. Maybe someday. Right now, I'm focused on you and me figuring out this new adventure together. He considered this with the seriousness only a 9-year-old can muster. I think Pretzel likes Seattle. She found a squirrel to bark at yesterday. She did. She was very proud of herself. Dad? He looked up at me with eyes that were starting to show the first hints of the adult he'd become. Are you going to catch more bad guys at your new job? That's the plan. Good. He snuggled deeper into his covers. I want you to help other kids not feel like I felt. I had to leave the room for a minute after that. 6 months after the move, On a quiet Saturday afternoon, Ethan's teacher called my cell. "Mr. Torres, this is Julie Anderson from Ethan's class. I wanted to let you know he left his science project at school, and I know it's due Monday." "Oh, shoot. Thanks for letting me know. We can swing by and pick it up if the building's still open." "I'm actually here grading papers. Come whenever you like." Julie Anderson was younger than I expected from our brief exchanges at parent-teacher nights. Early 30s, warm smile, the kind of genuine enthusiasm for teaching that hadn't been beaten out of her yet by budget cuts and standardized testing. She met us at the main entrance with Ethan's forgotten volcano model. "This is really impressive work," she told Ethan. "The eruption mechanism is clever. Did you come up with that yourself?" "Dad helped a little, but mostly me." "Well, you should be proud. A-plus material if you ask me." Ethan beamed. "Thanks, Ms. Anderson." While he ran ahead to the car to secure his precious project, Julie turned to me with a slightly nervous expression. "I hope this isn't too forward, but I was wondering, would you and Ethan like to get pizza sometime? There's a great place near the waterfront that does amazing New York-style slices." I blinked, caught off guard. "Are you asking me out, Ms. Anderson?" "Julie, and maybe, if that's not weird. I know you're a single parent and your son is in my class, and there are probably 100 reasons this is a terrible idea." "Pizza sounds great," I heard myself say. "How about next Friday?" Her smile could have powered the Seattle grid. "Next Friday works." Walking back to the car, Ethan gave me a suspicious look. "Were you talking to Ms. Anderson for a long time?" "Just saying thanks for staying late." "She's pretty nice." "Yeah, she is." "Are you going to get pizza with her? I heard her say pizza." "Maybe. Would that be okay with you?" He thought about it for approximately 2 seconds. "Only if I get to come too. And only if they have pepperoni." "Deal." 1 year after the motel keycard fell from a library book and changed everything, I stood at my kitchen window watching Ethan play in our small backyard with Pretzel. Julie was coming over for dinner, a regular occurrence now, and the house smelled like the pasta sauce I'd been working on all afternoon. My phone buzzed. A text from Jim Bradshaw back in Spokane. "Just heard. Your investigation methods are being taught at Quantico now. The library case is required reading for the Financial Crimes Unit." I smiled and typed back, "Does this mean I'm famous?" "It means you're an example of how to do it right. Now stop texting me and enjoy your weekend." The doorbell rang. Ethan sprinted past me to answer it before I could move. "Julie, we're having Dad's spaghetti. He's getting better at it." "High praise," Julie laughed, stepping inside. She caught my eye over Ethan's head and smiled, the kind of smile that felt like the beginning of something good. Outside, the late afternoon light was turning golden over Puget Sound. Somewhere in this city and cities like it, people were making terrible choices that would eventually cross my desk. Financial predators, digital criminals, those who thought they could hurt others without consequences. They were wrong. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, there was pasta to finish, and a table to set, and a kid who needed help with his math homework, and a woman who laughed at my terrible jokes. The past was over. This was the part that mattered now.